So it is Wednesday, May the 13th, 2020, 7:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I really haven't even really cared what the date is, because for people who've been working from home and work from home obviously now, the days really don't mean nothing. But what we're going to do in a nice 30-minute or less, possibly more, time frame is talk about as much boxing and combat sports and some, WWE and UFC mixed in, and give you guys a large dose of rankings, upcoming fights, potential fights. But in this case, I'm doing something different, where I actually have a live guest on waiting in the wings. So to start off, on TstreeT Controversy, this is TstreeT Controversy Live, where I do all of my videos live and uncut. In this case, you're going to see a little bit of jump cuts, but that's to make sure that we're giving you the best possible quality unedited content, if that makes sense. So first big news of the day, to jump right into things, 1 minute in, is now news has just come out that you're going to have Shakur Stevenson defending his WBO 126-pound title against Rafael Rivera June the 9th on Top Rank on ESPN. Now, from my understanding, Top Rank is going to rent a hotel where there's going to be a ballroom where the fights are going to be taking place, and the fighters are going to have their own floors. There's going to be stringent COVID-19 testing, and basically they're going to make sure they do everything possible to make sure that the fighters, the staff, and everybody are safe. But the big news of that is the Athletic Commission is going to be involved. So which means other promoters, if they foot the bill for the COVID-19 testing. Now, here's a little bit of information I got today. I don't know if it's true or not, but I was reading something earlier on Twitter, and normally if I'm reading something like that, it's probably coming from a credible source. I don't know, it was early in the morning. The point is, I read that UFC is paying somewhere upwards of $52,000 a day for a COVID-19 testing alone, and that there has to be 2 tests per day or something like that. I don't know, look it up. But I do feel with somebody like Bob Arum and Top Rank in charge now, no matter what you may think of them as a promoter or whatever, leave all that shit out of it. The man and the company, they are known to be, the most professional, and they've been in the business forever. So if anybody's going to do it right, it's expected that they're going to do it right. So as far as American boxing is concerned, even though we had UFC, that had 249 last week with Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, that went on without, a hitch. A couple of fighters, I believe one fighter, Jeremy Stevens, missed weight by like 4.5 pounds. Another fighter, I forgot his goddamn name, he dropped out because he had COVID-19, and I think his trainer. But nonetheless, it still was an overall exciting event with some leaking of numbers that it did about 700,000 pay-per-view buys at $64.95. So take that math and do what you want with it. The point I'm trying to make is, it looks like, combat sports behind closed doors without a crowd, it can work, and it is working. I mean, after all, WWE hasn't missed a beat, even though their ratings are at an all-time low. We're in a time in a generation where you have the kids, they're watching Twitch, watching people play video games. You don't have to watch the stuff live anymore. People's biological clocks, in regards to what time they go to sleep and wake up, it's all jacked up, from parents to kids to whole families. So it's no really need for people to watch an event here in the States. Monday Night Raw comes on at 8 p.m. Eastern. You could probably think to yourself, oh, well, if I'm watching a pay-per-views, I have WWE Network, so I can watch it on the WWE Network tomorrow morning. So, whatever the case may be, we're going to move on to some other topics, and basically we're going to take a little bit of a break. For me, it's going to be, a jump cut. Well, for you, it's going to be a jump cut. But for me, I'll be back in a few minutes, and then I'm going to come back with my colleague from Australia, and we're going to just talk about a whole whirlwind of topics and just, keep it flowing from there. I'm TstreeT Controversy with FightView360.com, so bear with me as over the next few weeks leading into June, and into July, you're going to see me really, really revving up the content. After all, I've had a lot of time over the last several months to really, really, during this lockdown, to really get things back in order and to start rebuilding and getting things to where I want it to be, to where when boxing fully opens back up, we're going to be ahead of the curve. So please subscribe. We'll be right back. I'm TstreeT Controversy with FightView360.com. We cover every single major fight live. All right, we're back. I'm here with my colleague, BigJ from Australia. And what we're going to do right now is not only are we going to talk about, up and coming fights, but we're actually going to go through the ranking of all. We're going to go through the rankings of all of the Australian ranked fighters and the fighters that are close to getting contender shots or eliminators or just plain old title shots. And surprisingly, as I've learned over the last several months, there's a lot of Australian fighters that are very close to title shots and getting more than possibly, have the chance to have more than possibly 3 world titles, in my personal opinion. In the next year and a half, depending on when boxing resumes. So I'm going to introduce my colleague from over in Australia, BigJ, and what he's going to do right now is let you guys know, for those who are interested in Australia and in New Zealand, when is boxing going to be back over in that territory. So what's going on, BigJ? What's going on? Let people know what's going on.
Yeah, g'day, mate. How you going? Right, so first of all, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has released a 3-part, 3-month plan in reducing the restrictions. So I think all states and territories are on stage 3 restrictions. What we're going to do is that over the next 3 months, so by the end of July, there's a 3-month plan that we should be back to normal by then. So we'll be at stage 2 from now until the end of June, stage 1 till now until the end of down until the end of May, stage 1 for the month of June, and the month of July will be the lower restrictions, and by August everything should return to normal. That's if everything goes okay, because we've had a few spikes in Victoria, which is the state I live in, it's the most heavily populated state in the country, but it's a small state. It's the size of I think it's the size of England. Victoria and England are about the same.
So, not to interrupt you, but what's a spike over there? Like, for example, over here in the States, New York is seeing somewhere at about, what is it? I forgot, somewhere around 1,200, cases or so a day on average, as of late. That's not deaths, but over there, from your knowledge, roundabout, are you guys, seeing, especially where you're at, or close to where you at, over 100 people, 200 people testing positive a day? How's it looking?
No. We had a spike at a meatworks. I can't remember what their name is. 62 cases from there and growing. 62 cases in this country is that's bad. So that's the worst thing that we had was the cruise ship. I can't remember what it was called. The Ruby Princess, I think. They had like 160 cases. That's the worst thing we've had for the COVID. So on a whole, we're still doing very, very well. I mean, I think we've only had like 10,000 cases for the entire time, if that. I don't think it's been that many. But yeah, there's been a bit of a spike. But in retrospect, the country overall, the cases are getting less every day. Like 1, 2, maybe a day. So it's really we're really starting to get a hold of this, and that's why the restrictions are being lowered. And in Sydney, which is the capital city of New South Wales, the pubs and clubs have been allowed to reopen. So things are coming along quite nicely, and I reckon they'll probably have a small boxing show event maybe in July. It depends. I think gatherings of 100 will be allowed in July, so they might have a small boxing event then. But
so what do you
big events?
So when it comes to a small boxing event over in Australia, you mean something like a mid card fighters, journeymen, up and comers, but nothing
small journeyman house show, like domestic level guys. Nothing big. Like Horn v Zoo won't happen until they get the clearance for a 25,000 person crowd.
Okay, so it'll be little club shows, pretty much. That'll be
little club show. Little club shows like they've got to do gatherings under 100 people. So I reckon in August, once everything's all clear, you'll start having the 200-300 crowd fights. The Flemington, which is where they hold most of the fights in Melbourne, which is just up the road from where I am. They'll start having small events there, smaller events, domestic fights there, and then they'll go from there. So it'll either be Sydney or Melbourne will probably host the first fight, and then they'll go from there. Like small 300 crowd, 400 crowd shows, and they'll go from there.
So Jay, tell the fans again, or the viewers that are watching right now, what exactly is that we're about to do. So we're going to be starting at the very top with the heavyweights, and I'm going to be moving all the way down the rankings, and talking about each of the what. I'm going to let you take over before we begin.
So basically, Australian boxing has never looked so good. Like, I've never seen a part, even though for my research, for where we have got pretty much a contender, a world-ranked contender in every single weight division. Now, I can't remember the last time, or if ever, that's ever happened in this country, because the first division, which is the heavyweight division, which we're going to speak about, Australia has had no success internationally in a heavyweight division ever. We've never had a world champion. The last person to contend for a world title was Alex Leopai when he fought Vladimir Klitschko. He was knocked out in 5 rounds, and he's a Samoan-born fighter, even though he's been living here since he was 12. The two bigger divisions, heavyweight and cruiserweight, we've had limited success. It's not until you get down to the light heavyweight that we start to get some real success. So this is fantastic for Australian boxing, because pretty much every single division has a top 15 or better ranked fighter. So I'm going to go through every single division and give a small spiel at each fighter, who they are, what their records are, and just give the people an education of what Australian boxing, because things are never starting to look better personally. I mean, some of these guys are like two fights away from a world title contender. So these guys just aren't journeymen. These are legit contenders that are only, some cases, one fight away from a world title. So some of these guys have already got world titles coming. They just had to wait for the COVID-19 to finish off. So
okay, so where do we start? Do we start with, I guess, Joseph Parker versus I don't know if it's a rumor anymore. It's not a rumor anymore that it's Joseph Parker and Lucas Brown is going to happen. It's just that the fight is not officially set. But the guys are going to fight, correct?
Well,
from your knowledge.
What I know, well, from what my knowledge and what I've read on Facebook over the last couple of days in the New Zealand Herald, I think it's called, there are talks at this stage. Nothing's official has been set in stone. For those who do know, Lucas Brown did win the WBA regular heavyweight title back in 2016 when he defeated that, what was that Russian fella's name?
Ruslan Chagayev.
That's it. And then all the drama and case and all that, the drug pinning and all that sort of stuff, I'm not going to get into it, because anyone who knows it will know it. Anyone that doesn't know, go research it. All that, which was very disappointing for him. And actually, he was actually supposed to fight our first guy we're going to talk about is Dempsey McKean, who's ranked number 14 with the WBO.
I have, by the way, I have Dempsey McKean highlights playing right now. I've been watching him since we've been talking.
Yeah, so he's ranked number 14 with the WBO. He's 18-0 with 12 knockouts. He's 6'6", so he's a big guy. I think he weighs in about 108 or something like that. His most recent fight was with Jonathan Rice. He won that by TKO. I think Jonathan Rice is an American fighter, because he was actually supposed to fight Lucas Brown. But Lucas Brown withdrew from that fight for whatever reason.
When was he supposed to fight Lucas Brown?
In March. The fight that Dempsey McKean was supposed to fight Lucas Brown was a fight that Jonathan Rice fought him. He was supposed to be an event on the Gold Coast with Liam Parra and Jacob Nick, but Jacob hurt his hand, because those guys, I think, were all signed to the same boxing promotion, which I believe is Ace Boxing Promotions, because they always have events together. He was supposed to fight him, but withdrew, I think, a month short of the fight. So I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Okay, because I remember that Lucas Brown was supposed to fight here in the States on Showbox against Otto Wallin, I believe it was.
Okay. Was that the Argentinian guy? Because he was supposed to fight Otis Griffin.
I don't remember. I don't know if Otto Wallin was on the same card or if Otto Wallin was supposed to fight Lucas Brown. I'm sure they'll probably help us out in the comments. But remember, we gotta move a little fast here because we got a whole bunch of rankings. So who else
Yeah,
is in the so that's the heavyweights right now. Joseph Parker is from New Zealand, obviously. Lucas Brown is Australian, correct?
yeah, Lucas Brown, yep, he's an Aussie boy. I think he's from Sydney. I'm not
Yeah, and
100%
then you
sure, but I
got
think
Dempsey,
he's
and then you
Sydney.
got Dempsey McKean. He
Yeah,
is ranked both by the
causing
WBO, the IBF, not by the WBC or the WBA, but still he's ranked with 2 or 4.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, so I think I think there was a speculation that he was going to fight Parker. I think Parker wants to fight Brown first, so we'll see how that turns out. But Dempsey McKean's definitely one to look out for the heavyweight division since Alex Leopai, who actually Joseph Parker fought just recently and knocked him out in 10 rounds. He's probably the best prospect we've had at heavyweight in a long time. So he's definitely
Yeah,
one to
well,
look out
he's
for.
20. He's listed at 29 years old, 6'6". He last fought in March before the shutdown against Jonathan Rice. He weighed in at 240 3/4. So he's a big dude.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy. So, and he's definitely one to look out for. So we'll move on down to the cruiserweight. This guy, Jaika Pai, is probably the best cruiserweight protege we've ever had. I mean, this guy is legit as they come. So he's 19-0 with 15 KOs. He's ranked 9th by the WBC, 6th by the WBA and IBF, and 10th by the WBO. There was a thing floating around that Tyson Fury wanted to fight him. I don't know where that came from, but gave me a bit of a laugh. But this guy here is probably the best title prospect Australia's got at the moment. Who's only a couple of inches away from getting a world title fight. He just fought Mark Bam Bam Flanagan, who was, I believe, a 2-time cruiserweight world title contender. Pretty much put him into retirement because Mark retired at the end of that fight. And Mark Flanagan was no pushover. He was an excellent cruiserweight. And Jaika Pai, he's a phenomenal boxer. He's got all the talent in the world. And every person I've spoken to about him, Barry Michael, Glenn Rushton, they all say the same thing. He's going to be a world champion. So he's definitely one to look out for because Australia's never had a world champion at cruiserweight. We had Danny Green, but he was the IBO champion. I'm talking the major titles. We've never had one at cruiserweight. So this guy is one to look out for. He's a phenomenal talent. His speed, his power, he's just phenomenal to watch. So his fight against against Flanagan really proved just what caliber of fighter he is. So he's definitely one to look out for. Fantastic talent.
Okay.
So we'll move down to light heavyweight. Now, the light heavyweight, you remember we were talking about Zach Dunn last video that we made? He was supposed to fight Dominic Bossell for the WBA interim and the IBO light heavyweight title.
Yeah.
We don't know if that's still going to happen or whatever, but he's keeping tabs on him. Another guy, because he's actually ranked 11th with the WBA, Zach Dunn. Now, another guy who's a former IBO light heavyweight champion is Blake Capillaro.
Yeah, a lot of fans from the States, you remember him. He fought on HBO against Sergey Kovalev. I believe, if I'm correct, he's the one, that Kovalev knocked him out with a body shot to the stomach. I mean, a straight right to the stomach, I believe. But right now, surprisingly, he's ranked number 3 by the WBA, very high. Here, let me pull up his resume really quickly.
Yeah, because he was supposed to fight Joshua
Buatsi.
Yeah, but he got sick like a week before the fight. I remember writing an article about that last year. I was like, because that fight was actually supposed to be for the number 1 contender spot against what's his name? What's the champion's name? Dimitri
Bivol?
What's his name? Yeah, that's him. Yeah, that fight was actually supposed to be the number 1 contender against to get a shot at the champion. So very disappointing there for Blake. But he'll get another shot. No, I watched that fight against Kovalev the other day. He actually knocked him down in the first round, but it was more like a slip that was caused by punches. Yeah, I saw that. And then,
I remember that.
He gut checked him and it just dropped him and he couldn't recover. It was like, wow, it was a phenomenal body shot. But those 2 guys in the light heavyweight are going to do great things. So hopefully Zach Dunn gets his title shot. I don't see why they would change that, considering it was set in stone before the COVID. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Well, normally when a fight is signed and the contract is signed for it to be for a title, it's going to happen. Because the contract is signed for the belt, to be on the line. They can't just say, oh well, so it's going to happen. So we're now moving down to 168 pounds. Anybody there? Didn't we? I covered that fight, didn't I? Rohan Murdoch and
Yeah, right. Yeah. He was number one.
Yeah, I did that video.
But, yeah, Zach Parker knocked him out because I think he had a long break. He didn't fight since December, I think, 2018. And I think he mucked around too much. He took that fight a little bit too lightly.
Yeah.
He was sitting there with his hands behind his back, daring Parker to hit him, and Parker didn't. And I think he knocked him out in round 11, was it? Because he was winning that fight, and then he just, I don't know what went wrong there. Maybe he was.
Well, it was that long layoff. If I remember correctly, it was that long layoff he had.
Yeah, it was, because he had over a year off between that fight.
And it looked like the fatigue had caught up with him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it was a bit disappointing because he was winning, for the first half of that fight, he was winning that fight. I was like,
yeah. By the way, that was on the to let the viewers know, that was on the undercard of Scott Quigg versus John O'Carroll. Scott Quigg's last fight.
It was. It was. But well, no doubt we'll hear from him again. So Ryan Murdoch's another one to look out for. Now we get into the interesting stuff. So now we get into the middleweight, where all the world contenders are.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Dennis Hogan. Who fought.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna let you lead the way.
So Dennis Hogan, who obviously fought Jamal Charlo.
Yeah.
Jamal or Jamel? Jamal Charlo at middleweight. He's still ranked number 8 by the WBC. And then we've got Michael Zarafa. So those who know, Michael Zarafa had those 2 amazing fights against Jeff Horn. The rematch was obviously far better than the first fight. The first fight was pretty much all Mick Zarafa, even though it wasn't televised over in the States. So YouTube it if the fans want to know. And then, surprisingly, Jeff Horn is still ranked 13 by the IBF at middleweight, even though he's not fighting middleweight anymore. But that's interesting. But the one thing that I've never heard of in Australian boxing that should be happening is that there's been no mention of a Dennis Hogan-Michael Zarafa fight. I don't see why this is not, because they're both ranked middleweight. They're both ranked in the mid-sections. And that would be a massive domestic fight, but no one's ever spoken about it. I can't. And
they can both fight at 154 and 160, so weight shouldn't be an issue. We do have to touch on what we talked about in the last video the last video you did when you talked to Dennis Hogan's trainer, Glenn Rushton. I'm going to put that link down below in the description box. Dennis Hogan seemingly has a 3-fight deal with PBC.
Well, Glenn wasn't privy to those conversations, but that's what his belief is.
Yeah, that's what this is.
He'll have a comeback fight next, and then his next fight, if he's successful with that, may be another world title shot. So, I mean, fighting Zarafa, that will get him huge international exposure. But then again, being PBC, he might fight a PBC fight. I mean, I imagine there's plenty there at the middleweight.
And also, Dennis Hogan's name is still, his name has value. So, I'm pretty...
Absolutely, because he didn't get the decision, but he beat Jameer Munguia in Mexico last year.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, there's very little people that would say Munguia won that fight. So, most people, that watch the fight go, yeah, he won. I mean, he won narrowly, but he still won. So
between 154 and 160, and we haven't talked about Tim Tszyu and Jeff Horn. We're going to talk about once we get down to 154. But right there is, 4 fighters that, are close to title shots or had title shots or can possibly be a world champion one day.
Oh, exactly. I mean, out of all 4 of them, Dennis Hogan's had the 2 world title fights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jeff hasn't had a fight since he lost to Crawford. He hasn't had a world title shot. Tim Tszyu's never had one. And Michael Zarafa hasn't had one yet either. So,
wait, when Michael Zarafa fought? No, Peter Quillen had dropped the title to fight Michael Zarafa. I remember that.
Yeah, because he was a WBO.
I remember that.
That was a non-title fight, and Peter Quillen destroyed him. Knocked him out in like 2 rounds or something.
Yeah,
it was a quick,
brutally.
It was a quick, brutal beatdown. Yeah. So, but Mick will live to fight another day, and I actually hope that he does fight Dennis Hogan or Tim Tszyu, but we have to wait for the outcome of Horn Tszyu, obviously, and I'm tipping that will probably happen if everything goes according to plan. I reckon in October, probably late October, that fight will happen. That's just my prediction.
Yeah. So briefly, because remember, we got to make sure we run through. We're halfway through, but when it comes to Jeff Horn versus Tim Tszyu, right now that's the biggest fight Australian, boxing can put on. When, do you think it's going to happen? You're saying it's looking like October, and you're saying the arena is going to be 25,000. And do you feel that, after the pandemic, since, after the shutdown, that the fight is now bigger?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it'll most likely will be the first pay-per-view back since the pandemic, because I mean, until before the pandemic, it was the only pay-per-view fight that was going to happen anyway. I mean, there was nothing else. Everyone was waiting for this fight to happen to see, is there going to be a Horn Zerafa 3? Is Zerafa going to fight Tszyu? Is Zerafa going to fight Hogan? Is Hogan going to fight Tim Tszyu, which is another fight that no one's ever talked about, which is a possibility. Those four guys, obviously Hogan's never going to happen because they're on the same team, but those four guys pretty much create all the buzz around the Australian boxing scene, and everyone else just has to tag on where they can. But those are the four biggest, most talked about fighters at the moment. So we'll wait and see. I'm predicting, late. Let me just bring up a calendar here. Like the last Wednesday in October, I reckon it'll happen, which will be October 28th. I think that's October 28th. That's when I reckon it'll happen. That's just a stab in the dark.
Okay.
Because they said they want 8 weeks to prepare. So I reckon about late October, because I'll have it on a Wednesday night, so that way people can actually watch it. Actually after because the football seasons will still be going around then, because they pushed the grand finals and all that back to late October, so they might actually have to wait until November, because everything depends on the football seasons in this country, especially around that time of year, because the AFL, NRL haven't returned yet, but they're pushing back, so their grand finals might not happen until November. So it's all wait and see. So
yeah, and just to touch on, how that will play out, here in the States, I expect for when boxing returns, the Zone, ESPN Plus, or, a Showtime International, which is a long shot, to pick up Horn versus Tszyu whenever it does happen. So now we're getting to the smaller divisions. Now, looking at 147, there's nobody there, right? I don't see any name.
No, I don't think there's anyone in there. I think the 147 is the only division that doesn't have anyone world ranked at the moment.
And what about 1 and 140? You have Liam Parrow.
Yeah, Liam Parrow. Yeah, he's 19-0, 12 knockouts. He's ranked number 2 by the WBO and number 3 by the IBF. And basically, he's just waiting for his chance to get hold of is it Jose Ramirez or Josh Taylor? Are they the champions?
Yeah, Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor.
I think they're having their unification bout, and then I think similar to what's going to happen with Jason Maloney, he's going to fight a top contender, and the winner of that will get the winner of the unification bout. So
it looks like the way it's set up, both Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez will likely be gone from the division by the time Liam Parrow, if he gets there. Them guys are going to be gone from the division. Because
they're moving up.
Yeah, Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez, they already going to be. It seems like they're going to be there for another couple of fights. So it's going to clear out for him a little bit. When that time does come. So he's the only one at 140 pounds from Australia, Liam Parrow, in the top 15.
He's the only one that I'm aware of, and certainly the top rank, the highest ranking 140. So he's a phenomenal fighter too, phenomenal talent. He appears on most cards with, as I said, Dempsey McKean and Jacob Nigg, who we'll talk about in a second. His last name's NG. I don't know how to pronounce that properly.
Yeah, I don't even. Ing, I believe it is.
NG.
I believe it's Ing.
Yeah, Ning. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anyway, he's a phenomenal fighter too. Just back on the heavyweights, we forgot to mention Justice Hooney is turning pro. He's an Olympic athlete. He's going to the Olympics next year, and the Australian Boxing Federation, I think that's who they are, have given him clearance to fight pro before he goes to the Olympics next year. So, and he's caused a bit of a whirlwind. People are actually getting really behind this kid because he's a big, strong, fast, powerful amateur with 18-3. He won, I think, world championships in Russia in 2016, and another one somewhere else. I think 2018. So he's a world champion amateur. He's turned pro just before the Olympics, and they're actually going to let him fight pro before he goes to the Olympics next year. And yeah, we'll see how things turn out for him. But it's creating a bit of a buzz, actually, because he's a Gold Coast fighter. He's trained by his dad, Rocky. And yeah, there was a news thing on the other day. So he's another one that I'm going to keep tabs on, see how he goes, if he has a few pro hit-outs before he goes to the Olympics, because apparently he's the best heavyweight protege in Olympic Australian boxing history. So there's another one to look out for.
Yeah, he's I can't find his exact measurements, but he looks about 6'4". He's about the same size as Joseph Parker, right?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah.
Another big heavyweight that can move. But yeah, we'll keep tabs on it, because I don't think there is some amateur footage of him out there fighting. But once we get back into it, I want to see how he goes as a pro. So we'll keep very interesting tabs on him. So back on the subject. So back down to the light division. This is where things get interesting again. We've got George Kaparos Jr., as we know, is fighting Lee Selby. When's that again? 20 July in England? What's the date?
Yeah, it's supposed to be July 11th.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So he's the highest ranked fighter for the IBF, even though at 135 the IBF doesn't have a number 1 or number 2 ranked contender at the moment. It's not rated. And him, I believe Lee Selby is number 4 right behind him. Now, that guy is a former featherweight IBF champion, is that correct? I think so.
126? 126. I forget. Wait, let me check. I got it right. Yeah, 120. 126. Mm-hmm. And he skipped 130. Yep. So yeah, he skipped 130, gone to 135. George has had his whole career at 135. Not since Jeff Fenech back in 1996 has anyone ever actually competed for the IBF lightweight title. And for my research, with the exception of Lester Ellis, who had the IBO title very briefly back in the mid-90s, we've never had an Australian win a major title at 135. I like this fight.
Yeah, I like it too.
I like this fight.
George wins this one, he gets Lopez. That's after, I think, the same thing at 135. They're going to have a unification bout, and the winner of that gets the winner.
Yeah, and especially with his affiliation with Top Rank. See, he's fighting Kambosos. He's fighting Lee Selby on a Matchroom card, but Matchroom and Top Rank have a very close working relationship when it comes to putting on fights here in the States. So if Kambosos wins, he'll likely fight. Because of his affiliation, he'll definitely likely fight the winner of Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez, unless Lomachenko-Lopez winner goes on to fight Tank Davis, because that was also talked about. So him getting a shot, here's the thing, just to touch on that a little bit before we move on, because it is relevant. Teofimo, if he wins, he's more likely to move against Lomachenko. If there's not a rematch, he's more likely to move up to 140 than Lomachenko. Lomachenko's not going to move up. So I guess what I'm saying is, depending on, for Kambosos, if he would have won against Lee Selby, depending on who wins Lomachenko versus Lopez will depend on when he will get his title shot or not. And it could be the difference between 1 and 2 years. That's just the way it works.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
A bit of a shame, but he is the top ranked contender of the IBF at 135.
And 135 is stacked from guys like Luke Campbell, Ryan Garcia, Javier Fortuna, Yvonne Mendy, Jorge Linares, and then the champions we mentioned, Devin Haney. It's a stacked division, and right now, the fight between him and Lee Selby, for example, if Lee Selby loses, people are going to be like, oh, Selby's done. But if Kambosos loses, then, the rebuilding, is going to be, a long path.
So well. And Jacob Neg, I think I can't pronounce his last name. It's spelled N-G, Nig.
Yeah.
Neg. I'm sorry about that, mate. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I should watch some footage to get his name pronounced correctly. He's ranked at 11 IBF and 11 WBO at 135. He's currently 13-0, 10 KOs. Appears on the same card as Liam Paro and Dempsey McKean. They've been appearing on cards for a long time, those fellas. He actually hurt his hand before he was supposed to fight because he was supposed to appear on the same card as Dempsey, McKean, Leary and Parra on March. So we'll wait and see what happens with him. Hopefully he's healed up by now. I think he withdrew only about a week or so before that actual fight. But he's another undefeated contender at lightweight, and he's another one to keep an eye out for. So then we move down to 130. Things get interesting at 130. Now, 130 is our most successful division ever. We've had more champions, more title fights, everything's 130's where it's at for Australia. What have we got? I mean, Lauren Eagle is the current Women's International Boxing Association 130 champion. We've had 4 guys hold the title at IBF. We've had a couple of contenders for WBC, a couple of guys hold it at IBO. So this is our most successful division. Bedell Dib is ranked, not to be confused with Billy Dib. There's a Bedell Dib and there's a Billy Dib. 2 completely different guys. Some people do get their
I had them confused.
Yeah. Well, Bedell Dib, is well, they're both from Sydney, so they're both from Sydney, those guys. But anyway, so Bedell Dib is ranked number 8 WBA. I don't think he's fought since about June of last year. He's had a bit of a long layoff. I think he was supposed to.
Yeah, he fought in September.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he fought September. Sorry, he fought September. Yeah. So actually, Billy Dib, I wanted to talk about him. There was a thing going around on Facebook. He was supposed to fight Mears. What's that guy's name? He was a former three division champion. Did you see that? He was supposed to fight this guy called Mears.
I don't know. I don't remember.
No, I saw that because he had I think his last notable fight is he fought for that diamond welterweight title against Amir Khan, and that lasted about 4 rounds. And he had another fight in December. He was supposed to fight again in March, but obviously that got called off.
Yeah.
But Billy retired and come back, so we'll see. But he's supposed to. I wish I wrote this guy's first name down. Mars is Mares is his name, and he's like a former 3-time 3-division world champion.
Abner Maris?
I think so. I think that's it. Yeah.
I don't remember that. And Abner Maris had an eye injury, so I could see him fighting somebody like Billy Dib as a comeback fight. But we are like we got to move on, mate. We 40 minutes in, and we still wait. So we already did 130, right? No, there's nobody at 130. Yeah, we talked about Billy Dib. Anybody else at 130?
No, there's no one at 130. We'll move on down. We'll move on down to Brock Jarvis. Now, Brock Jarvis is actually ranked at super bantamweight, but he's moved up to featherweight at 122. He's one of Jeff Fennick's proteges, and he is a world-class fighter. I mean, he's a very tall. He's almost 6 foot tall, and that he fights at 122. So he's a very tall, lanky fighter, but he's got phenomenal power. And he's.
I don't remember if I've seen him fight before. I'm pulling him up now.
He appeared on the Horn Zarafa first undercard. So Zarafa won. He appeared on that. No,
I didn't see it.
And he won the WBA Oceanic Super Bantamweight title. So he's a phenomenal. He's another one that can go all the way for a world title because he's a phenomenal talent. So obviously he's moved up to featherweight because he's had problems keeping it super bantamweight. Obviously because he's very tall for his weight division. So he's
there. He is. So he's ranked. So you got Murjan Akhmadaliev, who beat Danny Roman for the WBA and IBF titles. That was on the Zone. You have Ray Vargas, who's now the PBC fighter. He's WBC, and you have Emmanuel Navarrete, who is WBO with top rank. So 122, the champions. It's a very, very tough division. Very tough.
Obviously, Brock will have to prove himself in that division, but he's another prospect to look out for. And then we get to the exciting stuff, which is the Maloney twins. So, Jason at bantamweight and Andrew at superfly, and basically they're the last two. But obviously Andrew is the only world title holder, major world title holder we've got at the moment. Only male world champion because all the other champions are females. So he's got. I haven't heard anything about whether his fight against is it Israel Gonzalez?
Israel Gonzalez.
Yeah, I haven't heard any rescheduling for that fight or Jason's fight against Joshua Greer. because that was supposed to happen in Vegas on Anzac Day, actually April 25th.
Yeah.
But,
Well, the problem likely with their fights is the fact that they're in Australia, and the travel bans.
Yeah. See, the problem is that it's not the fight. Domestically, the fights can happen, but the international travel, like some countries, you can't go to. I mean, and I don't think our borders have been open internationally as yet. And if they do, you're 14 days quarantine. So, I mean, getting international fights is it's not going to be an easy feat, and probably until maybe even next year.
Yeah.
I mean, domestic fights is going to be hard enough, but international, certainly to America, you're not allowing anyone in America at the moment.
Yeah.
What's the international travel guidelines in America? It's like just flat out no, or
well, right. I don't even know, but I can't imagine nobody flying, especially out of New York or from the East Coast or anywhere, especially like anywhere. Like our shit is still hot, not out the country.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same with coming into the country. I mean, I don't think anyone's allowed into
especially Australia, where y'all getting your virus shit is under control.
Yeah, we're getting it contained. It's not 100% control, but we're certainly starting to put a lid on it. So.
Yeah, so I can't imagine the Maloney twins being able to fly out anywhere or anybody fly. It's just hard to imagine. And it's a shame because they were starting to make some leeway, even though even though he was he's got the world title. And that's Andrew. He has the WBA world title at 115 pounds. Chocolatito Gonzalez had won the WBA Super World in a fight where a lot of people thought they didn't know if he was going to slide or not. And then you have Juan Francisco Estrada, WBC, Jerwin Cajas, IBF, and if Andrew Maloney were to beat Israel Gonzalez, him and Jerwin Cajas was a fight that would have likely have happened, just along with we would have saw Estrada versus Chocolatito. You see what I'm saying? So, there is a path there and a storyline there for the fighters. But listen, Jay, we got to wrap it up because right now, the UFC is on. And I'm sure, we didn't give, these people more Australian boxing than they probably have heard from anybody on YouTube or anywhere over the last several years. I don't know, I don't know. That was a lot of information.
That's what you pay me for, mate.
Yeah, that was a lot of information.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good saturation, though. It's a good saturation.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, guys, is I'm going to let you guys go, and you're going to be seeing, and hearing from both of us more in the future, especially when these fights start kicking off. Because I can't wait for a time where, there's actually a significant Australian fight, like a Horn versus Zoo, or all the fights we talked about involving Australian fighters, where we can actually come to you a couple of days or a day or so, maybe even the day of the fight after, and actually talk about it and give you guys, some live uncut reactions on what's going on. So I'm TstreeT Controversy with FightView360.com. Me and my homie, old mate BigJ, are about to get up out of here, and we're going to see you guys soon with some more content. Please subscribe.